And I have not lost faith. I'm not in despair.
As young as 3 and 4 years old.
I haven't lost faith
From the time
because the arc of the moral universe is long,
identified,
but it bends toward justice.
Assigned at birth. So, gender identity is a person's
What
internalized
is
gender.
gender identity?
It's Mia Macy, and I was originally
Gender
born
is something
in
that's
Phoenix,
that's
Arizona.
often misunderstood
And
because we think about it in a
One of
binary.
my first memories,
You think
probably
only
3 or
male and
4
only
years old,
female.
I knew
And
that I was supposed
they
to
think
be
about
a
it
little
in
girl.
relation to.
So
often
I
people
remember
think of it
every
in
birthday
relation
just
to,
that was what I
sexual
asked for.
orientation.
And
They're actually completely
I
different.
didn't live
Gender
in an
identity
environment
is a
that was really
person's
socially acceptable.
mental aspect. It's how
So I
they
went
feel
the other
about
way.
themselves,
I was
who
going
they
to be
are.
super boy. I was going to do
In many
everything
cases, you
to
have
just
kids as young as
suppress
3 and
that
4 years
feeling
old that
and,
have,
so playing
from the
sports,
time they
hanging
could
out with
talk,
guys, and
they
then when I
have
turned 18, I thought
absolutely
then I go to the
identified
military.
with
I got
the
out
opposite
of
gender
the
that they were
military,
assigned
and I
at
went
birth.
back and started
So
school.
gender identity
and
is
testing
a
to be a police
person's
officer, and then worked my way
internalized
up,
gender.
as
That's
a
what it means to
detective,
them.
and then went into public affairs, and then eventually I was to the originally computer born in forensics, Phoenix, where we Arizona. investigated robbery, homicides, and child sex crime. One of my first memories, probably 3 or 4 years old, I knew that I was supposed to be a little girl. So I remember every birthday just that was what I asked for, and I didn't live in an environment that was really socially acceptable.
My name is Ashlyn Johnson,
So I went the other way.
and
I was going to be
currently a
super
social justice
boy. I was
advocate
going
in
to do
DC.
everything.
So about
to
7
just
years ago,
suppress that
I
feeling
started working for an
and,
employer
so
in the
playing
South, one of the most
sports or
progressive
hanging
cities
out
in the
with
South
guys,
Atlanta.
and then when I turned 18,
decided to work for this
then I go to the
employer,
military.
I saw
got
they had
out
a
of the
non-discrimination
military,
policy.
and I went back
so
and started
I
school
felt comfortable applying for the
and
job and
testing to
taking the
be a
job.
police officer.
Everything
And
was
then
going
worked my
well. I
way
got
up,
great reviews.
as a detective.
And
then
then
went into public affairs,
one day my
and then
employer
eventually
went on
to
my
the computer forensics,
because she
where we investigated
probably pieced
robbery,
things together with my
homicides,
partner,
and child
she
sex crime.
discovered that I was gay. And once she did, everything pretty much changed the employment situation.
I am your daughter, but as a lesbian, I am 4 times more likely to kill myself.
My name is Ashlyn Johnson, and I'm currently a social justice advocate in DC. So about 7 years ago, I started working for an employer in the South, one of the most progressive cities in South Atlanta. When I decided to work for this employer, I saw they had a non-discrimination policy. So I felt comfortable applying for the job and taking
Within
the
72
job.
hours, I was
Everything
notified that the
going well. I
position
got
was no
great
longer
reviews.
available. And like
then,
everyone in the world, I
one
was
day
watching
my
the federal
employer
budget
went on
fail.
my computer
It looked like government was
she
going to shut
probably
down.
pieced things
They
together with my
sent me.
partner,
She
and
said
she
that she
discovered
had
that I was
lost all the
gay.
positions. She wasn't going to be able to fill
once she
any of them.
did,
Sorry about that, but you lost your
everything
job.
pretty much changed the
So
employment
I thought
situation.
that's the reason I had lost it. But then, like everyone, I watched
I am your colleague,
Washington
but I
live
can be
in
fired
DC,
in
and
29
at like 9
states
p.m.
simply
at the
for
last
being gay
minute,
or lesbian.
the budget went through. So I was all excited. And then, so the next following Monday, I called her and said, okay, I'm ready to start. And she wouldn't answer my calls. They wouldn't answer my phone calls. They wouldn't answer my emails. They wouldn't answer anything. So I went into panic mode, started looking for work, started looking for Within 72 hours, I was notified that the position went was to no the longer Transgender available. Law Center, though, because and like everyone in the world, I was watching the federal budget fail. It looked So like I went to government was going to shut down, and we just started an initial She said inquiry. that she had And lost what we all the found positions. was She wasn't going to be able that, to fill any of them. Sorry about they that, did, but in you fact, lost your didn't job. kill the positions. They So actually I thought kept the that positions. was the reason But I'd lost it. They But then, hired like somebody everyone that was watched unqualified. They'd never Washington been in the military, live never been in police, never been DC, trained. and at like 9 p.m. at the last minute. Subsequently, they the also budget came went to through. me and said, so I was all excited. You might have And a then, legitimate complaint. so the next following Monday, I called her because and you're transgender, said, it's okay, not I'm covered ready as to a start. complaint. And that she was wouldn't answer like my calls. devastating. Because I I was was like, like, wait a emails, they wouldn't second. answer my emails, I could they have a wouldn't answer legitimate anything. complaint, but I'm So I went not into an panic equal mode. citizen. Serve Serve my my country, serve serve my my community, community, but I'm not even allowed to go to court or went to the ask Transgender the Law questions Center that I wanted to different ask. employers that were interviewing me were like, you should talk to somebody about this. So I went to TLC, and we just started an initial inquiry. And what we found was that they did, in fact, didn't kill the positions. They actually kept the positions. But I will be so they hired happy somebody that that was Holder is unqualified.
just
They'd
like a
never been in the
footnote
military,
in
never
a
been
book,
police, never
and
been
into
trained.
it, or something comes in and trumps it.
And
it's gonna take
subsequently,
reports
they
like
also
this.
came to me and
It's gonna
said,
take the work of all these
you
groups
might have a legitimate complaint.
getting this on
But
a national
unfortunately,
level.
because you're
We need a
transgender, it's
universal
not covered as a complaint
process
and
that just
that was
encompasses
like
us,
devastating
protects us,
because I
and
was like,
lets
wait a
us
second,
live and
I
be
could have a
productive
legitimate
people in this
complaint, but I'm
society.
not an equal citizen.
We're not there yet, but
serve my
I
country,
hope it's in my
serve my
lifetime.
community,
And I hope
but
I'm just
not
like
even
a
allowed to go
footnote
to
in a
court
little
or ask
history,
the questions that I
and
wanted
it
to
can
ask.
go away. The biggest misconception is that the LGBT community are somehow different or outside of mainstream society. And at the end of the day, people say things like gay marriage and same-sex marriage, but it's marriage. It's two people that go to their house and they pay their bills and they walk their dog and they raise their kids, and they don't want to get fired for that. The transgender community, people just don't understand who these folks are. The bisexual community, it's the same thing. They get put into boxes, and I could speak for an hour about the problems people have in that, but it's basically the misconception is this othering, that there's some sort of counterculture going on, when it's simply people want to be recognized as who they are and live their lives. In 36 states, gender identity is not covered as an enumerated class for protection from employment discrimination. And in 29 states, sexual orientation is not covered in that way.
I stuck it out for a month, and then, there was one day I got sick and I had to, I ended up being in the ICU for a week. And I let my employers know. They didn't contact me to let me know anything else, except for a week later they FedExed me a termination letter that informed me that I was being terminated because I failed to meet the school's attendance policy. And the only days I actually did not make it to the office were the days I was in the ICU. I was informed by Lambda Legal that I had no federal protections, I had no state protections, and that there was a law in our little policy in Atlanta that could protect me. But they pretty much saw that there was nothing they could do. After that situation, I worked with the ACLU to bring attention to the issue. I think federal protection is needed. I mean, INDA is extremely important. I actually thought I had federal protection, and I think that's the case with a lot of, not just LGBT people, but just with people in general. That I remember thinking when she's like, I don't want you in my office anymore. Like, I don't agree with your lifestyle. Just thinking, fine, bring it. Like, that's totally fine. I will sue you. And then finding out that there was nothing I can do, it surprised me. I think a lot of times people look at policies, internal policies, and they feel that that's enough. But it took that experience for me to realize that policies don't mean anything unless someone's willing to enforce them. Like, you can write as much as you want on paper, but if no one's willing to do anything about it and you can't back it up, it doesn't matter.
Since the United States Congress introduced the Employment Non-Discrimination Act for the first time in 1977, and it's been introduced in every session since then, and it has failed every single time. So I think a major problem is that if you ask, in polling, you ask the general public if they think a person can be fired for being gay or lesbian, they'll say absolutely not, that's against the law. 80% of people think this is already against the law, but in 29 states for sexual orientation and 36 states for gender identity, you can still legally fire somebody simply for getting married. In Oklahoma, we had marriage equality become the law 3 weeks ago, and one of the biggest concerns people had was that they could go say I do one day and get fired the next day for that because it was a public.
My first question is, what should the manager's role be in preventing harassment and discrimination in the workplace?
What we first need to do is you need to look at your policy. Adopt a clear harassment policy. Define sexual harassment. No tolerance. Discipline. It may be a terminable offense. How to report. Who to report to. The investigation process. Address no retaliation, and that's so important to address no retaliation. Train your employees, train your supervisors.
How would you handle reports of harassment and discrimination as it relates to Affinity Orientation in your experience?
Well, again, and you've got to treat every complaint seriously. Are you wanting to know the process that we would be doing as it comes into play, as if someone came in and had a report of sexual harassment?
Elaborate as you can, or
Okay.
feel you can.
First of all, you would listen. I would request something from them in a written form of their complaint, who they're complaining about. You would gather the facts. You would interview the victim. You would look at the witnesses. Is there any witnesses? You would explain the investigation to them. You would get the specifics from them, very detailed specifics. You would also ask them, what is the outcome? What do they want from this? Take very detailed notes. I also, in a sexual harassment case, would have someone in the room at all times with me, also probably taking notes. Also, I would be recording the interviews. Then you would interview the perpetrator. You would also explain the process to them. You would have to identify the victim. You could not keep that confidential. You would ask them to respond to the charges. You would ask if there are any witnesses. You take statements, document, record, have someone in the room with you. You would interview the witnesses after and get very specific with witnesses, very detailed. Then you would take your findings and you would outline it in chronological order, the report, and then you would hand that report over. You would probably want to consult with your city attorney, let him look at the report, see if there's anything that you've missed. And it doesn't hurt to go back to the victim, doesn't hurt to go back to the witnesses, nor the perpetrator. And then you would make your recommendations and turn that over to, it would be the city manager.
Just another clarifying question. And so would that work the same for harassment based on sexual orientation as it would for sexual harassment?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yes.
And why in the world would we not allow those equal rights for individuals who truly were committed to one another in life to be able to show that by way of a marriage? My daughter came out of the closet a couple of years ago. And you know what? I thought I was just going to agonize about that. Nothing's different. She's still a fabulous human being, and she's met a person that she loves very much. And someday, by God, I want to throw a wedding for that kid. And I hope that's exactly what I can do. I hope she will not feel like a second-class citizen involved in something called a domestic partnership, which frankly sounds like a Merry Maids franchise to me.
Gay rights groups are hailing it as a big victory. President Obama ordered any hospital that gets federal funding to give same-sex couples visitation and consultation rights.
President Obama getting ready to grant some benefits to same-sex partners of federal employees.
President Obama will sign a measure making it a federal crime to assault someone because of sexual orientation or gender identity.
No one in America should ever be afraid to walk down the street holding the hands of the person they love.
This is a triumph for not just members of the gay community, but for us as a civilization.
We are not a nation that says, don't ask, don't tell. We are a nation that says, out of many, we are one.